I'm Tony Northrup, and Adobe released an update to Lightroom, both Lightroom 6 and Lightroom CC. Though you Lightroom 6.6 users won't get all these updates, they're calling it 2015.6, even though it's 2016. Let's look at the first thing that they're talking about is performance improvements, and finally, right? Because when Adobe released the latest version of Lightroom, they talked about performance improvements, and then we tested it, and the performance did not improve. In fact, the performance got worse with the default settings, and we told everybody that you had to go in and turn off the GPU to get your computer running back the way you had known it prior to the update. Two good things. When you're browsing through photos in the develop module, which we do a lot, we'll flip through photos. Now Lightroom is much faster. On our computer, I went from about 115 seconds to browse through 10, 50 megapixel pictures, so about 2 minutes, to down to like 18 seconds. So much faster, drastically faster when you're flipping through pictures. It gets a little bit longer if you're zoomed in 1-to-1, but even then it only took me about 30 seconds. So it was still almost like 4 times faster, even when zooming in to 1-to-1. But something else to note here, it's now faster to have the GPU turned on, at least on my computer. Before, it was faster for me to turn the GPU off. There's a reason for this. Adobe, in the latest version of Lightroom 6 and Lightroom CC, they introduced GPU acceleration, but they did a terrible job of it. When you use the GPU, Lightroom would have to move the images into the graphics card memory, and that slowed almost everything down when you were using the develop module. And those performance benefits never really made up for it for the vast majority of users. They just wanted to encourage everybody to upgrade. So they kind of misled them, saying that there were these big GPU-based performance improvements. Well, they're finally coming around. The developer wrote a blog about it, which is why I know so much about the intricacies of it. But it really was misleading. But the developers finally had some time to actually make these performance enhancements pay off. So good. Upgrade to the latest version. It's faster when you flip through photos. Adobe also claims that bulk exports are faster. I tested this on 2 computers in 2 scenarios. The first exporting 11 50 megapixel pictures. The new version was actually a hair slower, but it's close enough that I'm going to say it's not statistically significant. Maybe my computer was doing something else. So basically no difference when exporting 11 pictures. But when I exported 426 pictures, it got to be much faster. It looks like it shaved off about 1/3 of the time. So we do have to test Adobe's claims about performance because they've been misleading in the past, but these actually do hold up. Thank you, Adobe, for making Lightroom faster. That's the #1 thing people ask for about Lightroom. It's often painfully slow. We need it to be faster. There's good evidence that this is much faster. I'd be curious to see how your computers perform. So before you upgrade, run a couple of tests. Do a specific set of tasks and make note of how long it takes. And then repeat that task after the upgrade. In the comments, let me know what your computer looks like and whether you saw a performance increase or not. They're also adding one really noteworthy feature in this new version of Lightroom, and that's guided transforms that will help straighten out your pictures, especially landscape and architectural photos, stuff shot with really wide angles. This can help. So I'm going to jump into Lightroom and we could take a look at exactly how that works. I have a couple of sample pictures here that I'll show you. Now this is a wide angle shot taken with my borrowed Pentax K1. So I'll switch over into the develop module here, and to use guided transforms, just scroll down to the transform panel here. This has kind of been here before where you could just like automatically try to level stuff, and it did an okay job, but I never really used it. But now you can draw lines on the screen to tell it exactly what should be straight. So I click this little icon here, the same as clicking guided over here. And now you can see it's zooming in for me. So I'm just going to click a couple of lines that I think should be straight. Now, maybe this isn't a great example because the building is falling down. But I'm going to go ahead and just click and hold the mouse button and just drag it. And okay, so there's one line. It's going to straighten out when I have 2 lines. So now I'll straighten out this tree here. So I'll pick something on the base of the tree and then drag it up towards the top of the tree. All right, so now it's looking at those 2 lines and it straightened out the picture. There's a weird bug in this version of it that has to do with the constrained crop, because the constrained crop, well, I can slide the scale down here. You can see when you do a transform, it's going to alter the shape of the picture. And constrained crop should move the crop in so that it continues to fill the screen. And it did it automatically in this case, even though constrained crop is not selected. But you can see if I select constrained crop and try to scale it back, it won't do it. But now if I turn constrained crop off, well, it's just the behavior is inconsistent and weird. So there's a bug with how constrained crop works. Just be aware of that. Let's go on to another picture. Here's a picture at Manzanar. Again, I'll hit this line here, and like this, well, that line actually tilts a little bit. So let's pick this line here, which is perfectly vertical. I'll just drag it along here. And I need 2 lines, so I'll make the second line kind of the horizon here. So there you go. It straightened both of those 2 lines out, adjusted the image. If I scroll the scale back here, you can see how it had to alter the image. I would love it if they were to stretch the edges out a little bit more intelligently, so it didn't have to do that type crop. They do this for the panoramas, but not for this. Maybe for a future update. Let's go back to the grid view here. Let's look at an old worn down building. And I also want to make the point that straightening all your pictures isn't necessarily the right thing to do, because humans are used to, like, stuff that's farther away is smaller. And therefore, if you shoot a building with a wide angle, then it's going to look like it's leaning back. But we're used to seeing that. So if you go through and you straighten out all your pictures, they'll often look a little bit weird, and they'll actually look like they're leaning towards you, even though they are genuinely straight. So just be careful about it. I usually find that I like the transformed buildings to not be perfectly square, but to actually be leaning back a little. But sometimes with a super wide angle lens, it'll be too extreme. So I'll kind of go halfway with this. I do this a lot in Photoshop. This is just a feature from Photoshop that they're moving into Lightroom. But anytime I don't have to make that jump from Lightroom to Photoshop, I appreciate it. I just want to plug the book. That's basically all the updates that you'll get in this version of Lightroom. I have a whole book on Lightroom if you want to learn more about it, and it includes free updates. So I'm taking this information and wrapping it into the book, something all buyers of the book will get in the ebook version of it, because if you get the paperback, you also get the ebook. The paperback version is only $10. It includes 14 hours of video training, over 250 presets, super cheap, and it's a real book. You can check it out on Amazon or at my store, sdp.io/store. Yes, we ship worldwide. Subscribe, like, share. Thanks.